When I drink regular green tea, I usually will not swallow the green tea leaves because some of them have found to be contaminated with heavy metals like lead. So here are a couple of matcha powders that have passed the heavy metal test. Hi friends, I have here two kinds of almond flour. One I personally wouldn't eat. Can you guess why they're different? Take a closer look. Well, the reason why I won't eat one of them is because it'll take up space in my stomach and crowd out other nutrient-dense foods. Nutrient-dense stem cell boosting foods, that is. So I'm going to give you a little bit of time to think about this almond flour dilemma. In the meantime, here are my top 10 lists of foods to target on a weekly basis if you want to boost your stem cells. Number 1, eat papayas. Papayas are a nutrient-dense, antioxidant-rich, stem cell rejuvenating fruit packed with powerful enzymes and bioactive compounds called papain and chymopapain. These compounds help to break up proteins. Now, have you ever used a meat tenderizer? If you read the label, I bet you it's probably papain. Papain is also used as a digestive aid to help break down protein-rich foods into smaller parts called amino acids and peptides, which can help relieve symptoms of bloating and discomfort. Because basically, protein is a difficult to digest nutrient. People have used papain medicinally to treat sore throats due to colds, reduce inflammation from dental surgery, and from joint pain. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of clinical trials in people with papain, but I found some pretty cool animal studies with papain that showed it reduced inflammation. Now, pre-treated animals could tolerate more pain and had significantly less blood inflammatory markers. And many people have a difficult time understanding that the right food can be more powerful than medicine, and the wrong foods can be as inflammatory as toxins. Now, people have confused all natural foods with man-made processed foods from all natural ingredients. Natural foods have antioxidants that protect your mitochondria and stimulate your stem cells. Now, every time you eat or drink anything, you're either activating stem cells or you're activating inflammatory cells. And in your intestine, you have 4 to 6 stem cells per crypt, and there are over 10 million crypts. 10% of your blood cells are from your intestinal stem cells. So this is why many people who have intestinal inflammation become anemic, even though they're not actually losing blood. And a large part may be because their intestinal stem cells can no longer contribute to the production of their red blood cells. And when you don't have red blood cells, you don't get enough oxygen to all your stem cells in any of your organs. And the thing is, gut inflammation is invisible, unlike inflammation on your skin, unless a physician or surgeon takes a camera to look inside like a colonoscopy. Now, these procedures are minimally invasive and not without risk, so it's not really practical most of the time. Instead, physicians use indirect markers to measure inflammation, such as fecal calprotectin. Calprotectin is a natural protein made by your immune cells called neutrophils, macrophages, and monocytes. And these cells, they actually travel throughout your body. Now, your immune system is literally the organ that coordinates the actions of the rest of your organs to work in sync. It is a lifeline for communication between the tips of your toes, your gut, your heart, and your brain. Now, when neutrophils collect in an area, that's inflammation, and a collection makes white pus or an abscess. So that whitehead or acne is a collection of dead neutrophils. Calprotectin is a sensitive inflammatory marker that can be checked in your stool, and they usually check it for inflammatory bowel disease. And this is one way that we can tell if someone has inflammation in their skin that's inside of them. Irritable bowel syndrome is uncomfortable, but it's not quite like inflammatory bowel disease. But calprotectin is also elevated in many other diseases such as acute appendicitis, peptic ulcer disease, celiac disease, and graft versus host disease and transplant rejection. Now, calprotectin is not just a marker of inflammation. It actually regulates your stem cells, how your immune responds. In other words, determines the degree of inflammation and how well your stem cells will thrive. Inflammation can happen anywhere at any time all over your body. Calprotectin also stimulates hay fever and chronic allergy symptoms. Now, foods that trigger inflammation, whether it's lactose from your milk, histamines from your fermented foods, or fructose from your sugary sweets, have all been correlated with higher levels of calprotectin. Now, don't get me wrong, healing requires inflammation, but too much inflammation for too long impedes healing. So if you're eating food that keeps triggering inflammation on repeat with your meals and then your snacks, well, you can imagine that your body just never gets a break. It's like being chained to a treadmill that never stops. Now, this is chronic inflammation, which tires your immune system, ultimately causing tissue breakdown that starts with the tissues lining your gut. Now, the lining is as thin as paper. And on the other side of the lumen lies your gut microbiome that is your friend when it stays there, but they turn into opportunistic infectious germs when your barrier is inflamed. This is why it's important for all of us to have healthy guts, because we need to contain these friends and keep them where they belong. Once they get out, they will terrorize your health. Hence, it's important to secure your border. And when you don't have a competent immune border and competent immune border agents, you are susceptible to so many different toxic, metabolic, and infectious diseases. So every time you eat papayas, you actually coat your GI tract with a plethora of antioxidants such as vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E, folate, and lycopene. Now, these nutrients, along with their special enzymes, they help protect your cells and prevents DNA damage in your stem cells by reducing oxidative stress, which is a normal but toxic process. It's like making trash. It's a normal process. We make trash every day. When you eat enough micronutrients, you can then preserve your blood flow to keep this trash revolving. Have you had enough time to figure out the difference between these two almond flours? Now, almonds are number 2 on my list, but you have to eat them a certain way. So let me show you the difference between these two almond flours. So this almond flour, you can tell, is simply very white, right? You see that? Okay. So that is pretty much white blanched almond flour. This almond flour is different. Look at that. This is a difference in almond flour, okay? So this is specks, right? And this is kind of like these raw almond slices. You see what the difference is? They're not white. They have a brown coat. This is how I eat my almonds, right here. You see that? That is almonds that have skin on. And this is really important because if you don't eat the almonds with the skin, you're not getting the most nutritious part of the almond. The skin part. This is packed with phytonutrients, antioxidants, and fiber. So blanched almond flour, it doesn't have that. And this is why I wouldn't eat this flour. So let me show you a real whole almond with a shell on top. And I think we forget what all natural food looks like these days because we don't eat them. Okay. So this is an almond that hasn't been shelled yet. And I have here a nutcracker my friend Kathleen sent to me. So I'm going to put it in here. I've never used this. This is actually the first time I've used it. And apparently you're supposed to secure this and then crack it. Okay. So let me see if I can crack it as a whole nut. Supposedly you're supposed to cover this up so that it doesn't, get in your eye. So I have a towel I'm going to use to cover this up so I don't get this almond flinging everywhere. So this is how it works. I secure the almond inside this holder and then I'm going to probably move this lever in the back to see if it cracks it. Okay, so let me see. All right, here we go. Okay, that didn't work. Oh wait, something happened. All right, so let's see. Cracked a little bit. Needs a little bit more. Maybe I need to go the other way. I'm gonna do it again. Okay, that didn't work. Why didn't it work? Okay, there's something wrong with this nutcracker. It's not quite working. Oh, actually, it did crack. This is a real raw almond. You see that? And this is what I used to eat when I grew up. I would buy nuts and shells. They were always all over the place. Now I have to go out of my way to find them. So I end up buying nuts prepackaged. But here we go. Whoop, there we go. So it came out of this shell, and this is what an almond looks like. Look at this coating versus one that is prepackaged. Okay? The prepackaged shell has lost that color. Look at this. It's lost this color. You see the difference? So this is why we need to eat foods whole, because when you see that color, you are eating more phytonutrients, right? As opposed to this has already been cracked, right? And what's even worse, if they take that fiber shell out. And it's really this shell that is so unique because the almond has a lot of fat. All nuts or seeds have a lot of fat. And fat gets rancid really easily, right? If you think about your oil on the countertop it gets pretty rancid easily, or your old stale potato chips. We call it rancid, but it's actually oxidation. So fat gets oxidized. And when the fat gets oxidized, you've actually changed the chemical properties of that fat. It reacts to your body differently. So polyunsaturated fats are actually oxidized quite easily, and they are actually the good fats that we should be eating. However, if they become oxidized, then that becomes a bad fat. You don't want to eat that. This is why you don't want to save your fat. You want to use it one time and then get rid of it. Or you want to eat it really in whole food form. So if you grind it to a powder, this is more susceptible to getting oxidized. Or even these slivers are more susceptible to getting oxidized. Whereas if you ate it in a whole almond, then it's less susceptible. So the taste will be different between this one that's been sitting around versus this one that I just cracked. So I'm actually going to try it. These are all raw almonds, okay? So I'm going to try actually almond sliver, and I'll tell you, it's a little bland. Tastes good, but it's bland. Okay, I'm going to try this whole almond that I got in bulk. Actually tastes more almond taste with the whole almond. And then I'm going to try this one, the one I just cracked. Definitely the one in the shell has the best almond flavor. The almond flavor is from the other nutrients in the almonds, like the flavonoids and the polyphenols and the tannins. These things give a food its richness, its aroma, and its flavor. You may have heard of terms like catechins, epicatechins, and quercetin. Now, these are simply nutrients in the almonds that protect itself against cellular damage. And these are the things that we are eating and that we need to protect our bodies from cellular damage. You know, our lives are all surrounded by stress, and we talk about it as if it's a bad thing. Sure, too much stress is a bad thing, but low levels of stress is not only normal, it's also unavoidable, and it is in fact very good for our body. This is because stress trains our body to tolerate even bigger stressors. Now, have you heard of neopterin? This is a compound that was actually first isolated from the larvae of bees. Now, if you know anything about bees and bee colonies, worker bees spend their life working to make and sustain the next queen bee. So the queen bee is basically a regular bee that is fed royal jelly, which also has neopterin. And guess what? You also make neopterin. Neopterin is made by your immune system and a variety of other cells when it's stimulated, especially during an acute infection. Now, the highest level of neopterin is found at the end of the incubation period, in which people have the first onset of symptoms right before you make antibodies. Elevated levels of neopterin in biological fluids such as your blood, your urine, your spinal fluid, they're associated with higher systemic inflammation and immune activation. Now, neopterin is one of hundreds of inflammatory proteins in your body. Now, most people spend a lot of time and money taking care of the outside of their skin to calm the inflammation or to hide the inflammation. How many people put on makeup to hide their acne or fine lines? When we do that, we're not spending time and money to take care of the actual root cause of inflammation that is happening inside our bodies. And what people don't realize is that the outer skin is a sentinel chicken of your body showing you what's going on inside. And by covering up with makeup, it doesn't address the inflammation to improve your health, which will then improve your skin. And most of the time, our insides are actually aging faster than our outsides because we spend so much time nourishing and repairing our skin. If you see a cut, you put some cream on and a Band-Aid to baby it and to help it heal. If you have dry skin, you will put on lotions and creams to protect it, maybe some gloves before you wash your dishes. For some people, this care can be thousands of dollars a month. I have here a red light therapy box. This isn't cheap, but it does help with skincare. How about the inside though? What do you put on the inside? You can't red light therapy your insides, especially when it has all this mechanical trauma from the friction of eating. Just friction alone damages our insides. And are you actually trying to avoid the 10,000 toxins that we know about that the FDA allows to be added to processed foods? That's actually just half the battle. The other half is to eat foods with ingredients that protect your insides. This is kind of like eating food as a Band-Aid.
Hi friends, I am so thrilled that you want to take charge of your health and take charge of your food. Now, I know nutrition can be complex, but it doesn't have to be. And I'm here to support you in this lifelong journey. So if you point your camera app to this QR code, it'll take you to a link for a free handout that I created just for you. And if you like it, if you want to see other handouts, please go to the link in my show notes, and then you can leave me your feedback on what I could do to help you in your journey. Okay, back to the video now.
If you think about it, people spend more time seeing a medical doctor because the skin on their insides of their body is struggling. But as a medical doctor, we don't have medicines that actually heal the body. That's the body's job. Our medicines work by removing insults, removing toxins that impairs the body from healing. Or they target specific mechanisms that we think is going wrong so that the body can be in balance. But healing is more than just one mechanism. And where do you start? There is so many toxins in our environment. How can a person figure that out? It's really, really hard. However, your immune cells can do it. And it's the immune cells that works along with other cells to start the healing process so that you can recover and get back to normal. And this battle is going on inside us all the time. And it's really difficult to see it unless you have a camera. And even with x-rays, a camera, MRIs, we can only see so much. But if your immune system is struggling, you're going to feel it. Abdominal pain, bloating, nausea. These are all symptoms that the inside skin is struggling. And when it's bad enough, this inflammation, this battle starts affecting other organs, including the outside of your skin, your memory, your mood, how your lungs feel. There is really no organ that's spared when your immune system is overactive. Now, when it comes to boosting stem cells, you don't want to boost the wrong kind, right? You want to boost the ones that will help propel your health and suppress the ones that are going to stimulate cancer growth. This is like giving fertilizer on your lawn, and then all of a sudden you don't just have grass, but you also have weeds. We don't want the weeds to grow. And food is amazing. It has its own ability to do that. Whereas medicine doesn't work like that. That's why people who do chemotherapy feel bad, because there's a lot of friendly fire when we give people medicines. And part of it is when we give food, we're nourishing the cells that know what to do. Those are your immune cells. Cancer chemotherapy is changing so rapidly, and now they're trying to stimulate and wake up the immune system to target cancer, as opposed to taking a drug and just blanketly wiping everybody out. And this is why when I eat food, I target anthocyanin-rich protective antioxidants daily. And during the holidays in America, we like to eat cranberries. And honestly, I've never liked cranberries. I always found it so odd that people enjoy dipping sugary cranberries with turkey. That's just, to me, a very strange combination. And the first time I was exposed to cranberries was when my mom bought some and I opened it from a can. I poured it out. It just didn't look very appealing, and I tasted it and it tasted even less appealing. But cranberries are an amazing ball of polyphenols. However, processing it does destroy a lot of it. So if you were to eat canned cranberries, you are eating 1/26 of the antioxidants of a cup of fresh cranberries. We don't get fresh cranberries all year long, but a pretty good substitute would be frozen cranberries. And some people buy cranberry juice because they think it's beneficial for their health. Well, cranberry juice is 1/16 of the polyphenols that you would get in fresh or frozen cranberries. Now, if you're going to drink the juice with sugar, the sugar then counteracts all the benefit that you're getting from the polyphenols. So it's really important not to eat cranberries with added sugar. And it's actually quite hard to do that because I used to be a dried cranberry fan. And I realized I love the sweet and sour taste. And one day I turned the bag around and read the ingredients and realized that I was basically eating added sugar. So then I started looking for cranberries with no added sugar. And instead, they would use apple juice. And for a long time, I thought that was a healthy substitute. And no, it's not. It's the same thing as added sugar, except that they got the sugar from apple juice. And I didn't realize at the time, but even added sugars in dry fruit, they fed the microbiome in my mouth that then made acid to cause me cavities. Now, this is the season for cranberries, and my brother recently found really cheap cranberries at Costco. He was so thrilled because he and we both seek antioxidant, nutrient-rich, dense foods to eat. Now, even I can't eat cranberries raw because they're so sour. However, we both figured out a way in which we can get ourselves to eat them. So he pairs his cranberries with squash. So he cooks something like butternut squash or kabocha squash, and the sugar flavor in the squash, even though it has a low glycemic index, actually counteracts and balances the tartness of the cranberries, so that sweet and sour taste is delicious. He was the one who actually encouraged me to do a video about cranberries to help people transition from eating cranberries with added sugar. So here's a cranberry recipe that I really enjoy. So I basically blend purple sweet potatoes with cranberries. And the sweetness of a cooked purple sweet potato, it covers up the sourness of cranberries. I also like to add cocoa powders to some of my sweet foods because I want those procyanidins to improve my blood flow. And the right cocoa powders also have high flavonols that activate the good stem cells. So this mixture you can actually put in the freezer right before you want to eat it. You can blend it again to make it even creamier. It's kind of like the nice cream that people make. If that's not sweet enough for you, put a date on the bottom of the mixture and scoop it on top so it kind of looks like a sandwich. Then you put a strawberry for the top piece. This is a delicious polyphenol, antioxidant, stem cell activating sandwich that honestly I could eat every day. Now, number 4 are really my favorite berries. They are wild blueberries, which have more antioxidants, particularly anthocyanins, than the conventional farm-raised blueberries. Now, these anthocyanins, they enhance stem cell proliferation by reducing oxidative stress. So this promotes a healthier stem cell environment. Now, sometimes at the supermarket, you will find these cultivated blueberries and they're gigantic. The bigger the blueberry, the less skin the blueberry has. So the tiniest ones have more skin, and the skin is what I'm after. They contain the most polyphenols, the most antioxidants per gram. Now, one year I went to Alaska and my friend took me around and we were berry picking. So Alaskan blueberries are very low lying. And so I was actually hesitant to pick them because animals can pee on things that are lower to the ground. And I noticed that the wild blueberries are so tiny. I guess that's why bears, they spend all day eating berries. So if you want to find wild blueberries, go to the freezer section. That's where it will be. And wild blueberries, you'll notice, will be richer in color. They'll be smaller, but they'll also be sweeter. Now, fresh blueberries and frozen blueberries, they both have comparable antioxidant levels unless they are wild. And this is why I make it a point to eat wild blueberries every day because it has been shown to improve mental health and memory. And one of the most difficult cells to preserve are the cells in your brain and your nervous system. Unfortunately, people only worry about their brain when something catastrophic happens. But what they don't realize is that you only feel and see the major catastrophic events. However, many catastrophic events can be happening all the time if you have high blood pressure spikes. So unlike sugar spikes, where we don't quite know what that high blood sugar level is, we do know high blood pressure spikes can be quite deadly. And just like sugar spikes, a persistent level is the problem. There is a form of dementia called vascular dementia. This means the brain has suffered blood vessel damage and results in brain cells getting less oxygen and nutrients. This is the second most common dementia after Alzheimer's dementia. The brain can only stand about 5 minutes of the lack of oxygen before it gets damaged. And people don't realize that this is a chronic condition and they don't really see a doctor until it's too late, where they have difficult time with thinking and memory and behavior. And when their brain gets scanned, they've had many strokes along the way. And the reality is people don't get a CT scan often, right? It's not something that you want to get often because it's full of radiation, but they also don't challenge their memory. However, they do notice that it's not as sharp as they age. However, if you eat blueberries, you can improve that memory. And stem cells, like really all cells, are very sensitive to oxidative stress. And oxidative stress can lead to dysfunction of your cells and speed up aging. Now, even healthy mitochondria, they get oxidative stress all the time. And these things, such as reactive oxygen species, are a normal part of life, but they need to be deactivated by antioxidant defenses. And these defenses you need to get from your food. And the most powerful defense is called the glutathione redox system. And this is a normal system that you have in your body. But glutathione is like gas at the gas station. Your car can only drive if you fill up your tank with gas. And your cells work the same way. Your cells can only function if you get enough glutathione. So if you're better able to quickly regenerate that glutathione, then you will help your stem cells thrive and you'll be able to tolerate more stress. I think of glutathione as a lightsaber for Jedi Knights. And this is why I focus my diet on foods that can increase my glutathione level to help it regenerate naturally at the fastest pace that it needs to regenerate. And hence this is why people feel better when they front load their diets with cruciferous vegetables like number 5 broccoli. Broccoli sprouts are especially high in sulforaphane, which helps your glutathione redox system. Now, they literally sell pills with sulforaphane, but the problem is how much you're actually getting active sulforaphane because it's a really unstable molecule. But when you eat cruciferous vegetables fresh, they are vibrant and green, and you know that it's full of sulforaphanes. And when you massage it or you chop it up, you are releasing molecules to help you make more sulforaphanes. And this is because you break up the cell walls, which releases 2 molecules, glucoraphanin and myrosinase, which is actually an enzyme. Myrosinase converts the glucoraphanin into sulforaphanes. And this is why you need to massage or pre-chop your cruciferous vegetables. And again, broccoli sprouts, they contain significantly more sulforaphane than fully grown broccoli. And nature repeats itself. The smallest things are really powerful in the plant kingdom. And speaking of powerful green things, have you ever thought about drinking green tea instead of coffee? Twice as many people drink green tea in the world compared to coffee. So number 6, try some matcha green tea. Matcha is a fine, bright green powder made from younger green tea leaves, and they are actually grown in the shade. And this helps them to increase their chlorophyll. Now, if you eat matcha powder, you're actually eating chlorophyll. And traditionally, matcha powder is mixed with hot but not boiling water, and then it's whisked to a frothy drink. And you may have heard of matcha because it is more expensive than regular tea. And it also has that brilliant, pretty green color. And I used to think that green color was fake, but it turns out that indeed it is all natural. Some matchas have a component called EGCG, epigalactocatechin gallate, which has been shown to promote the growth of stem cells and protect them from damage by regulating various signaling pathways and reduce inflammation. Now, green tea, even though it originated in China, matcha actually was invented in Japan within the Buddhist culture. Now, the Buddhist monk drank matcha to stay alert and focused during their meditation. Heard of ceremonial grade matcha? That is supposed to be the highest quality of matcha powder specifically crafted for traditional tea ceremonies. Matcha leaves are supposed to be the youngest and most tender leaves at the very top of the Camellia sinensis plant. And after harvest, the leaves are dried and stripped of stems and veins, leaving only the soft leaf parts. And these leaves, they're supposed to be sweeter and without bitterness. And this is because they have higher levels of L-theanine, an amino acid that promotes relaxation. When I drink regular green tea, I usually will not swallow the green tea leaves because some of them have found to be contaminated with heavy metals like lead. Now, if you just drink the water, then that won't be a problem unless you're drinking matcha. So here are a couple of matcha powders that have passed the heavy metal test. Jade leaf has slightly more EGCG per cup. Now, isn't it amazing how nature can help us keep bad cells down while promoting good cells go up? Women who drank green tea at least 3 times a week lowered their risk of colon cancer. Now, if you're at least 45 years of age, then you need to go get yourself a colonoscopy because that is actually the recommended screening age for colon cancer in the United States. Now, cancer cells, they're really selfish because they basically suck in all the nutrients and they take over the body unless something stops it. It just so happens that green tea has been shown to activate tumor suppression genes that are necessary to stop cancer cells. And this is why it's really important to get enough EGCG. Now, I actually drink green tea for its germ-fighting properties, but it just so happens it can also help to boost metabolism, reduce a little bit of weight, reduces LDL cholesterol, and lower blood sugar. Now, I understand some people just don't like it, and if you don't want to swallow it, even gargling green tea is beneficial to reduce the severity and duration of colds, as well as reduce the amount of cavity-forming bacteria called Streptococcus mutans. Now, if you really think about it, green plants are some of the most nutritious foods on earth. Giant herbivores all feed on green plants. One rare animal is the giant panda, which thrives on bamboo, which is number 7. And did you know that bamboo stimulates human stem cells, including stem cells for your hair? Now, bamboo is literally one of my most favorite vegetables growing up. Now, unless you live near an Asian supermarket, it's probably going to be a little difficult for you to find edible bamboo. But essentially, bamboo, they are just giant grass. So you can actually grow it yourself. The edible portion of bamboos are the tender shoots that just emerge. There are actually hundreds of different species of bamboo that can grow over 50 feet tall. Bamboos are the fastest growing plant on earth. Supposedly it can grow more than a meter a day. It also can provide an endless supply of timber and replace wood for any application. Bamboos also help produce more oxygen in the air and remove the carbon dioxide. And it just so happens to be a great reservoir for storing water and preventing soil erosion. And of course, it's an important food for the giant panda. Another stocky plant that our parents used to grow in our garden was Chinese celery, number 8. The primary bioactive compound is NBP, which stimulates human stem cells, even human brain cells. Now, NBP is thought to work by improving blood flow and protecting neurons from damage. Now, these are early studies in animals, but traditional Chinese medicine have been using Chinese celery for centuries. Now, when I grew up, my mom would tell me all the health benefits of eating Chinese celery leaves because I refused to eat them. Celery leaves are quite bitter for children. Now, if you've ever eaten an American celery leaf and think that's bitter, well, Chinese celery leaves are 10 times more bitter. So if you have children and you're encouraging your children to eat more vegetables, even though they won't do it, just keep encouraging them. It works. Look at me. My mom, she would talk about all different kinds of vegetables like a broken record. And at the time, I would poo-poo it and not eat it. And now that's my diet. And it took me a couple of decades, but eventually I realized that my mom was right. And for me, I have to do that homework first, the hard homework, and eat those vegetables first because they are the least favorite foods for me to eat. So eating bitter vegetables like number 9, mustard greens, is a lifestyle that one just trains to get used to. There's a Vietnamese dish in which they use broad leaves to wrap up foods. They have the savory crepe and they wrap broad leafy greens so that they can eat their leafy greens while they eat the crepe. Now that is just a delicious way to eat mustard greens. Now mustard greens are a part of the cruciferous family of vegetables like broccoli. So you're going to get sulforaphane when you eat mustard greens. Now, number 10 can be another bitter food, and that is cocoa beans. There is more cocoa beans in dark chocolate, unlike milk chocolate, which is more addictive because of the added fat and sugar. But it can also be high in flavonols if you get a good quality milk chocolate. And chocolate can improve your blood circulation and stimulate the release of stem cell growth factors to promote stem cell growth. Now, there's ongoing research about cocoa powder's effect on injured neurons, weight loss, lowering blood pressure, and increasing blood flow. Even topical cocoa powder can have some benefit on the skin to protect it from UV damage. However, most of the chocolate that you see, like especially during Halloween, they're not the right kind of chocolate. Really, really good dark chocolate actually shouldn't be bitter at all. In fact, if your dark chocolate is bitter, that means they burned the bean. Cocoa beans need to be fermented and then roasted. And during the roasting process, if the flame is too high or they kept it too long, well, they basically can burn it. And most of the time when people eat chocolate, they can't just eat one, but there is a way to eat chocolate so that you can put it down and yet still enjoy the flavors and aroma of that chocolate bar. And if you want to know how to do that, watch the next video.